Good morning. It is November the 6th, 2024, and I don't have a lot to say about yesterday's uh, fiasco in the United States, but also in Apartheid Canada. But I am going to say a couple of things, and then I have no intention in getting caught up in all the wild posts and hoo-ha about Donald Trump. But I want to say two things. So one is a message to good people, friends, colleagues in the United States. Love and support people. I know it's devastating for a lot of people who deserve a lot better. I will say that one of the sad things watching the United States and Apartheid Canada and other democracies has been the failure to deal with their history, deal with the past honestly, genuinely, by looking in the mirror at themselves, and also failing to recognize that there are the tools. They have the tools. The tools exist in the trees with Indigenous people, relations, honor the trees. The tools are there in the messy approaches and checks and balances and all that was put in place in democracies. They're flawed, they're failed, all human systems are failed, but there are tools. And the sad truth about the United States and Canada and so many nations that have, quote, freedom and elections and so on is the society doesn't understand anymore. Like, people don't invest in understanding and education. People don't even, in the United States and Apartheid Canada, understand their system and the political system and how it works and how one can challenge it and how one can participate. And it's pathetic. It's really pathetic when one looks to nations or a people without a nation, like Palestinians, and their deep commitment to community and supporting each other when they've been denied everything and are being brutalized in a genocide. It's a reminder, any colonized people, of the strength. So you have the tools. Like, put away your smartphones. Taylor Swift and Beyonce, celebrities like Lady Gaga, are not going to save you. They are not your future. They're not your positive future anyways. They may have a role to play in encouraging people to participate, but stop listening to the George Clooney's and that celebrity crowd who are elite. They're like billionaires. They don't give a shit when they're not doing their little Nescafe ads or whatever the fuck they do. They're at fashion shows and going to the Met Galas. They're the 1%. They're not. Everything is a branding exercise for them. And then I think one of the things about the election and also around Palestine, and this is true of Canada, is like the brutal reveal of the truth about the inhumanity of people that have tried to position themselves as really, like, caring and concerned. You get a figure, and I think particularly around Kamala Harris, right? All of these people that came out and pleading for her, somebody who's like been very right-wing, hawkish, and backed genocide. And then there's Harrison Ford. Everybody loves Harrison Ford now, great actor, wonderful, but shitty human being for like making a pleading for Kamala Harris. So that's kind of what I wanted to say, is like, this is the time. United States, you had Trump and you got rid of him, you had him on the ropes, and you let him back because you haven't done the work to heal, right? You're still bogged down in race is the problem, and race is one problem among a lot of problems. And what has been revealed, certainly, hopefully, to people is it's more than just race. A figure like Kamala Harris is a person of whiteness, and by that I mean a cultural way of being that is about colonialism, capitalism, a kind of Christian fundamental. It's about power, right? And that's what whiteness is. It's not about being, appearing white. That's something else. But what we've seen is hopefully revealed that it's more complex. We can't just sort of dismiss shitty things happening by just going white people bad, because race is a fiction. Whiteness is evil, right? But one doesn't have to appear as a person who is, quote, white, to be a person of whiteness, right? So I wanted to read a couple things. I always go back and then that's that, and I want to say a couple things about Apartheid Canada and where the focus should be, and then that's me. And nobody, I get it. You don't have to care what I think. I often go back to James Baldwin and a generation older than me, right? People who grew up between the wars, the Depression, lived through the Roosevelt, FDR years in the United States, lived through another promise that didn't come through, lived through horrible bankruptcies, lived through lynchings, the hard fight for civil rights, and a lot of times what we see is like contemporary pop people like quoting and referencing, but it's like you need to go a lot deeper. Way too many people during the last year quote Martin Luther King, or they quote Malcolm X, and but they always quote the early stuff, right? And without looking at where did they end up before they were taken from us, right? Martin Luther King ended up at the point at the very end where he was shifting his focus away from race and looking at poverty and the great divide in the United States of all people, not just like black communities, but all people, all poor people. And he said close to the end, just before he was brutally assassinated in Memphis, to Harry Belafonte, great, that's what a celebrity / political figure does, right? Like very active. He didn't just show up for marches or pop things into his music videos, not that they existed. He was doing the work. That's the model. But he said to Belafonte, like, we've done all this work and I'm excited, about the poverty, campaign that we're about to launch. But he said, my biggest worry is that we've just fought hard to become part of a system that is broken. That is a profound lesson that got missed until very recently for anybody paying attention. And then in the case of somebody like a Malcolm X, yes, Malcolm X at one point said by any means necessary. Many of us still say that in the case of like by any means necessary. Shut Israel down. Stop this genocide. But Malcolm X in the later years was talking about something very different. He was talking about his faith in Islam. He was talking about going to the Hajj. He was talking about leaving the United States, going outside, meeting people in Mecca, and seeing the world and seeing Islam as something that was very complex and diverse, and people of all backgrounds and races, and that's where he was at. He was like, oh, this is the future. Everybody forgets. Everybody wants in the United States to keep it in this locked, in this fight over race, which is real. I get it. It's real. So I just want to read a couple of things. This comes from Eddie Glaude Jr.'s remarkable book, Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and Its Urgent Lessons for Our Own. And Glaude, actually, at the time this came out, a couple of years ago, was commenting on Trump. So here's a couple of things he said. Trump and his ideas are not exceptional. He and the people who support him are just the latest examples of the country's ongoing betrayal. When we make Trump exceptional, we let ourselves off the hook, for he is us, just as surely as the slave-owning founding fathers were us, as surely as Lincoln, with his talk of sending black people to Liberia, was us, as surely as Reagan was us with his welfare queens. When we are surprised to see the reemergence of Klansmen, neo-Nazis, and other white nationalists, we reveal our willful ignorance about how our own choices make them possible. And here's another. He said, to make that decision, we will have to avoid the trap of placing the burden of our national sins on the shoulders of Donald Trump. We need to look inward. Trump is us, or better, Trump is you. And then the last quote, I love this quote. Not everything is lost. Responsibility cannot be lost. It can only be abdicated. If one refuses abdication, one begins again. And that was the title of Glaude's book, which I highly recommend. Then the other thing I want to talk about is to Apartheid Canada. So get your heads out of the USA. People in Canada seem to not understand their own democracy or how it works or what a parliamentary system is with all its flaws. When you vote for Trudeau, you're not electing a president, you elect a party. It's a very different system, and again, like any human system, flawed, but it has tools. What is people have allowed, and this is the Trump influence, but others too, and Stephen Harper in Canada, is it has allowed the politicians, elected politicians like Trudeau and Joly, to abdicate their responsibility to bend the rules, and nobody seems to think that's a problem. They're not actually engaging in a democracy. So yesterday, Francesca, sorry, I just went blank, but the United Nations representative who deals with apartheid genocide, who has been so bold and strong and courageous and clear in condemning the genocide, but also through law, through explaining to people international law, right? We have laws, and that's what they're for. And lately she's been calling so many people out, which is really quite remarkable. And let me just see here, not Francesca. So Francesca Albanese, sorry, I forgot her name, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories and also genocide, and she has another May 1st, 2025. So she's in Canada. And sorry, I got off topic there. So, like, the United Nations was created coming out of the Second World War, all the horrors of the Second World War. Canada, right? Lester Pearson, Apartheid Canada, was very active in the establishment of that organization, a very important organization. Again, flaws, it's human. Also, though, at the same time that Canada is, active in the United Nations, Lester Pearson, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, is going around lobbying for the creation of Israel in Palestine. So balance, playing all sides, whatever. The point I want to make is, like, yesterday, Francesca Albanese is in Ottawa. And that's where the focus in Canada should have been, in this country. People like Matthew Green and others on the Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy Committee, whatever they call themselves, met with her. The people who should have met with her are Justin Trudeau and Melanie Joly and the entire Liberal caucus. And in fact, the whole government. She should have been welcomed as a major figure. This was a rare opportunity for Apartheid Canada to look in the mirror, and didn't, right? So people avoid and whatever. And it's horrible. It's a horrible embarrassment. And shameful. And so applause to her for just standing up and schooling people. There's a good video people should see. It was her at how she was snubbed by the Canadian government, but also her answering questions. And somebody asks, like, ignorant reporter, again, our reporters need to be better educated, asks, like, do you recognize the state of Israel? And she's like, why are you asking me? Of course, like, Israel exists. Israel exists. That's what she says. It's the UN. It exists. That's just it. What I'm concerned about is, within international law, is people, the rights of the Palestinian people, and the breaking of international law by war crimes, genocide. That's what is here. But she's so incredulous because she's looking, I'm sure, thinking, like, what a bunch of morons. And which people are behaving as, right? They've lost track of, like, what is law, what is, it's not a popularity contest and all that. So I just want to say, like, people in Apartheid Canada, like, this is where the focus needs to be. Stop thinking you're state 50, right? I'm going to say 50, not 51, because Hawaii is Polynesia, right? That's not a state. And it should be recognized as a free indigenous territory. But people here, they're obsessed with American celebrities. People pay more attention to the elections in the United States than in this country. People here don't understand the system. They need to. This is a real wake-up moment, I think, for so many reasons, right? The state of the planet, the demands of Indigenous peoples and communities that need to be backed and supported, and people need to get out of the way. But speak up if you have things to say and to share, but not to take over, right? And in this country, it's like, honor the fucking treaties, right? Like, we have treaty obligations as settlers, right? And that history, if you know it and read it, you'll see that Indigenous people, right, stood up for their rights, were open, and often and many times supportive and welcoming, and like, we're going to try and do this together. We've all had to move around at some point. And instead, like, oppression, abuse, and lies. So that has to stop. So again, celebrities aren't going to save you, right? Unless some rare celebrity appears like Harry Belafonte again. But even then, he followed the lead. He followed the lead, right? It's not about, and money and money and money. And the genocide has to stop, right? And the allowing of like extreme violence that we see at universities and in communities, of allowing these like Proud Boy, white supremacist types, Zionists, to run freely around. There was an incident yesterday where somebody, was assaulted, a peaceful protest, and somebody gets assaulted and nothing really happens, right? Tired of all that. So that's all I wanted to share today. Peace and love to everyone. I do get told by people in this community often, like, nobody cares what you think. And somebody recently, who I will name at some point, but it's not pointless, but actually said to me, like, get down off the cross. We need the wood. Like, what a stupid thing. It's like, a friend of mine said, that's a slogan you practice in the mirror. So people like that, I just say, like, unless you have something thoughtful and meaningful to say, shut up, right? If you're just going to quote and blah, blah, like nonsense, like some kid in the schoolyard going, I told you, what am I? That kind of, I know you are, but like that stuff, that's what I feel like I confront a lot. So anyways, that's what I have to say. That was a long thing, but I think it's important. I've shared. If you agree, disagree, that's life. I just think we have a responsibility to stop lounging about and entertaining ourselves. We live in a world in crisis, and it's a world that many people in Indigenous colonized communities and oppressed peoples have been living with for generations. So we either run it, we either continue in Western nations of power to run the planet into the ground and take all these other species with us, or we take responsibility for being likely the only place in a vast expanding universe where there are actually sentient beings, and not just human, but sentient beings, who have a responsibility to, and the privilege to think about what does it mean to be alive, right? And what it means to be alive is not to spread death. To be alive is to embrace the wonder of it all. And Canada and Apartheid Canada and the United States have done far too much to crush that hope. So peace and love to all of my colleagues and friends out there in the world, and good luck.